Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Waxcast podcast. This is episode 18, 19. I'm losing track. We're getting so many episodes, but today I'm joined by a friend of mine, another Twitterer. I don't even know what the word is. Person who uses Twitter, Twitterer, Twitter, whatever. But a fellow young Republican, Bonquay Bryant, who's the vice chair of the Johnson County Young Republicans out in the great state of Kansas. I wanted to bring him on because I think we see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, and I want to just go through some of the headlines of the day, headlines of the week. But Bonquay, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Evan. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be
Um,
here.
no, so it's my pleasure. So let's go over what's been going on in D.C. in the Beltway and that horrible scoundrel-filled town known as
Oh,
Washington.
yes, yes,
um,
yes.
this COVID bill, this COVID relief nonsense that's been going on. First, Trump said he was going to veto it. Then he ended up signing it. Now they say, okay, we signed it, but they're going to do a $2,000 check instead of a $600 check. And we're going to get a repeal of 230, and we're going to get an election fraud commission. But all that seems dead on arrival because the Dems hold the House and they're not going to let that stuff pass. So is this all just a giant game of charades? Is Mitch McConnell really throwing us to the wolves? What do you say?
Oh, Mitch McConnell. This goes all the way back to having a clean and concise and very coordinated base. We as a party have become very disconnected. Uh, we can't get things done at the state and local level because there's too much infighting. We can't get things done at at the Capitol, in Congress because there's so much infighting. So when it comes to issues like this, repeal, don't repeal, veto, don't veto, add this, take this out, Section 230, anything like that when it comes to bills in Congress, there's not really a lot of hope because if we can't get our base together, our foundation right, then how do we expect the people in Congress to do anything actually for us? So really, I believe it's a lot of blowing hot air. Uh,
I
and,
I
and
agree. I agree, and you're right. I mean, the party's broken from the bottom up, top down, whichever way you want to cut it. I mean, you're right about the infighting at the local level, infighting at the upper levels. I mean, we do not march in lockstep like the Dems. The Dems
yeah,
want something. The Dems get it. The Dems stick together, and our party just loves, betraying the base, betraying the grassroots, and just betraying Trump. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. That's what it looks like to a lot of people. I mean,
and
how do you feel?
you know what a very key thing is, Gavin, is you very rarely see, and I have actually not seen it at all this election cycle or within the last 3 years. Democrats will not throw another Democrat under the bus. I
Yep.
mean, for Christ's sakes, those guys can. I think it was in. I don't want to get the state wrong. I think it was in Massachusetts. There was a House representative that was caught going to meet a teenager, basically engaging in pedophilia. Not a
And they
word from the Democrat Party. And, as a Republican in the GOP, for Christ's sake, you could, tax evasion, which I'm not saying that any of that is good, although taxation is theft. Just want to put that in there. But, you could get him up for tax evasion, and every GOP politician from every corner of the United States will throw you under the bus. They just
It's
want to
true.
all get their jabs in. You don't see the Democrat Party doing that, which is why I think they're running circles around us. Uh, they're not beating around the bush. For them, it's they're going to win or they're going to burn it all down. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad strategy to have, especially not in this polarizing time when it comes to politics.
I 100% agree with you. We should be taking some cues for how they fight because they fight viciously, they fight ferociously.
Got to take the
They
gloves off.
Exactly, and they fight to win. And you're 100% right as well, because when their people, when their members, when their representatives, electeds, whoever, it doesn't matter what level, it could be the lowliest of people, they could be the highest of more senior officials. Anytime they get caught doing something wrong, they circle the wagons around them, they protect their own, and they fight off the controversy until it's simmered down, and then they move on business as usual. We throw ourselves to the wolves. We backstab each other. Maybe it's a consequence of, Republicans being more individualistic. I don't know. Maybe it's just the nature of, conservative ideology or more right-wing ideology. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's not, it hasn't been winning us a lot of battles lately because we always seem to come out with the short end of the stick, even when we have majorities, even when we have even in a red state, even in a wherever.
What we don't understand as a party is we have to realize that we have to get behind the party. You may not like the person, i.e.
Right.
Donald Trump. You may not like Donald Trump. You may think he's abrasive. You may think he's an asshole. I personally love him. You
Same.
may not like him, but he is the leader of the GOP. So if you're a part of GOP and you want to win, it's simple. It's a matter of picking between you want to win or you want to lose. You got to root for the party, or there's going to be a ton of infighting. And a lot of these politicians, for as old as they are, which is ridiculous, they don't understand that.
Right.
It's like Gen Z is having to school these older politicians on how to win, which
And it's
is
true. And look
mind-boggling.
what's going on in Georgia now. The polls don't look that great in Georgia. And look, I have my issues with the establishment. I have my issues with the party. But I've always said if I lived in Georgia, I would 100% vote Republican because it doesn't matter how bad they are; they're always going to be better than the Dems. And in this case, honestly, they may not be the best candidates. I think people have to separate two things. You could be a bad candidate, but a good senator. And if you
Yeah,
look at Purdue and Loeffler, however the hell you say her name, she and him are in the top 10 in terms of senators. I mean, they vote with Trump 90% of the time.
yeah,
I think they're horrible candidates. I think they're not
yeah,
like good campaigners. I don't think they're very likable. But as far as like on paper, they're pretty decent and they're
yeah.
way better than Warnock and Ossoff. Don't you? Would you agree? Or
I agree. They aren't very active,
yeah,
and as politicians in general, as candidates in general, you're going to learn that you can't solely rely on party momentum. You're going to have to get out there, shake hands, kiss babies, and actively campaign.
yep.
Now, on the other hand, their opponents are just piss poor opponents. I mean, you got one guy who's a trust fund baby who does music and a communist sympathizer with China, and the other's a woman beater. I mean, if we lose that election, I would not be upset. And if you can't pull that off, if you can't get out and campaign and motivate people to not vote for the Chinese communist sympathizer trust fund guy or the woman beater, I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
It's true. If you lose to either of them, you deserve to lose. Because
yeah,
I may say that our side has bad candidates, but their side, my God, I mean,
no,
the amount of controversy that keeps coming out now. Now I heard Warnock like poured piss on some kid at a summer camp or something because he wet the bed. Like the stuff that keeps coming out on these people. Ossoff is like the most unlikable, fakest, phoniest trust fund, pencil neck
yeah,
guy you'd ever meet. I mean, they're the worst candidates. But again, it goes back to what I just said and what you said, how they circle the wagon because they have all this controversy, they have all this baggage, and they have all this these negative things in their history. But the Dems and the media and their allies and big tech, they cover up for them, they prop them up, they clean them up, they make them seem like they have nothing. And most people, the average Joe, the normies, the people who aren't paying attention, like you and me, they have no idea how bad these guys are,
yeah. I mean,
which
and
is sad.
you look at Georgia, you think about Georgia. Ossoff or Ossoff, however you say his name, does not come to mind. Maybe
Yes,
Atlanta, maybe a certain part of Atlanta, but
yeah.
he just does not scream Georgia. So I'd be very disappointed in my Georgians if they elected Ossoff. But
Georgia used to run to the right of Florida and North Carolina. It was always a more Republican
oh
state than both
gosh,
North Carolina and Florida. And even look when Obama flipped North Carolina. Look, Obama flipped North Carolina in '08. I get that. And North Carolina's been trending blue. But North Carolina stayed with us in 2020. But you're telling me that Georgia flipped blue after we
yeah,
beat Stacey Abrams, after we got, these guys in the first time, after we got Kemp in, for whatever that's worth. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense how this flipped so drastically, so quickly. And it's so sad that the Senate literally comes down to a deep red Southern state. I mean, this is topsy turvy. I mean, I don't know what kind of
which
country the politics have changed rapidly.
which is why I'm all for the fraud commission and getting a good look at what's going on. There are a lot of conspiracies out there. There's a lot of theories out there. There's a lot of ideas. There's some proof out there. Whether or not it changed the outcome of the election, that is to be said. But everybody should be in favor of a free and fair election. And if there are fraudulent votes, that disenfranchises every single valid vote. So I don't know. I don't understand why Democrats would not be coming to the forefront and saying, hey, well, I do know why they're not doing it. I know why they're not doing it, but it does not make sense for them to do that because what happens if somehow GOP comes up with some way to wield that power to just automatically, steal an election?
Right.
You'd see, like you've seen already, buildings being burned,
Yep.
looting, riding, and everything else.
They would turn the whole country upside down if
Yeah,
the roles were reversed in a heartbeat. They wouldn't miss a beat to do it. And you know what's funny? I mean, if I know we both know why they don't want to investigate this stuff, but honestly, if I was a Dem, if I was a true believer, if I was a leftist, a liberal, whatever you want to say, and my side won an election, but there were some, question marks that even I, as a liberal, could, be like, all right, this doesn't make any sense. We didn't win the bellwethers, we didn't win this state, we didn't win that state. The numbers don't make sense. The demographic numbers don't make sense. I would want to rub it in the Republicans' faces and have an investigation just to win twice,
yeah,
just to be like, look, you claimed that we rigged it, we didn't rig it, we won legitimately, and we made you guys look like idiots for even questioning it. But they're not doing that. They don't even want anything to be looked into. They don't want
yeah,
any sort of investigation, any sort of transparency, because they know the second that starts to happen, the whole house of cards begins to crumble. So they're just clinging on to this win, which is only by the thinnest of margins anyway. I mean, it's a few
yeah.
states, but you're talking about what, like 200,000 votes or something ridiculous. I mean, they're clinging on because they need to maintain this narrative that they won this and they won this big when they really didn't.
Yeah. But well, let's just throw out a hypothetical.
Okay.
Say for I'll probably get some crap on Twitter for this. I guess I upset the Groypers today on Twitter as well. They're coming for him. But let's just say hypothetically Trump does not win, Joe Biden becomes president. It's 4 years of inaction. It's 4 years of basically nothing. One is 4 years of he's already said he's not going to use any executive orders. Okay, cool. Two is 4 years of being able to stick it to BLM and looking at them saying, look how stupid you look now. Like, what has he done? What did you gain from it? 4 years, it's over. GOP wins in a landslide. I mean, you could have a rock run as the GOP presidential candidate in 2024 and they will win over Joe Biden.
If
So
he's alive.
if he's alive, and that by natural causes,
Right.
we're saying I
Right.
don't need
Right.
the
Right.
FBI coming in, rappelling through my window or anything, or the
Well,
Secret
look,
Service coming
they
in
need to be
here.
investigating Kamala, however you say her name, if he croaks, because she has the most to gain in that situation.
Yeah, this I've never seen a more fake person, but and a lot of people say, oh, the black community, that's how she won. Is like absolutely not. I have a ton of Democrats in my family. When Joe Biden said he was running for president, they begrudgingly said, okay, he's a Democrat, rolled their eyes. But when Kamala Harris, when he announced her as the VP, they all but said absolutely not. I mean, they were like, no,
She's not
not going to happen.
likable. She's
So
not
don't
likable.
know. No,
People see through her.
she's fake.
People see,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah,
she just has this aura about her that, like, even if she wasn't a politician, there are people, like, I'm sure and I know in real life, in person, just through our own friend circles, whatever, that just don't seem right. They just have, like, there's something off about them. She just has something off
yeah,
about her. But I want to go back to what you said earlier, because I agree with your thinking here, because we have to look at the silver linings, we have to look at the positives, and the positives are that, let's assume that this wasn't a stolen election. Okay, fine. Biden is not going to be. He's probably going to be a one-term president. He's not going to last. He won because he was able to cobble together this coalition of people that just hated Trump and they were just upset about COVID. But that's not going to be the same coalition that exists in 4 years. Not to mention the GOP made
no,
gains all down ballot in the Senate. I mean, we held a lot of seats in the Senate. Hopefully we keep the Senate, but in Congress, in the House, in the state houses. I mean, there's tons of stuff to be excited for. And, the gains we made in different demographic groups that have traditionally not voted Republican. I mean, all this stuff was started by Trump. It's going to hold
yeah,
over. So it's good building blocks for the midterms in 2022. It's good for 2024. So, I mean, we can't just give up. We can't just lose hope, is what I'm trying
yeah.
to say.
I just say everybody, be though as it may, if he won, we have 4 years to regroup. We have 4 years to
Yeah.
focus in and focus on city, county, state house, state senate, poll workers. That was a huge thing in this election. Our poll workers were being pushed around. It's like if you're a poll worker and you're there legally, you don't let somebody tell you where to stand. You don't let somebody remove you from the polling station. You're there legally. If it causes a physical altercation for you to do what you're legally allowed to do, so be it. Do it with ramifications afterwards. But you don't let people cheat during an election. So that's something that I think I want really a lot of a lot of young Republicans and college Republicans groups state young Republican groups to get in and be very active and aggressive. And let's get to these polling stations. Let's change the attitude about these polling stations, and let's be a little bit more aggressive and say, hey, we don't have to go out here like Antifa, BLM, and burn, loot, and riot, but we can be assertive and say, look, this is the law, and this is the way it's going to be handled, and we're not going to back down from it. So we need to focus in on those polling stations. We need to focus in on solidifying our base and coming together as a party. That way, we don't get caught off guard in 2024.
It's true. I mean, it's true because I think a lot of people rested on their laurels, and the poll watching and just getting observers. That's a huge part of winning
Yeah.
elections. I mean, here in New York, I mean, you have to have people there because if you don't, the shady business is definitely going to happen, and you have to be naive to think it isn't happening. It doesn't matter if it's New York or Kansas or wherever. But that actually reminds me, I want to talk about Kansas. I want to talk about Kansas politics because I don't know much about it. I don't know much about what's going on there. I mean, I know you guys have a governor that's Democrat, correct?
Yes, but
Wh-
luckily, our state does a really good job of reining in our governor. There will be no Governor Gretchen Gestapo Whitmer in the state of Kansas, the great state of Kansas. There will be no Andrew Crazy Nipple Pierce Cuomo in the great state of Kansas. Uh, Laura Kelly, a lot of people, really dislike her, and she's a Democrat, and I don't think her focus and attention is where it should be. She does a lot of things like the equality and social justice when this is Kansas, and that's really not an issue here. I think her first bill was signing a bill on LGBT rights. That is not an issue in Kansas. Uh, so she's one of the more harmless governors. But then again, we have a supermajority. We have a Republican state House and we have a Republican state Senate. So she's pretty much well checked on the checks and balances thing.
How
So
did she get in though? Like, what happened out there? How did she get elected in such
yeah,
a deep red state?
my theory is we had the great Chris Kobach
Uh huh.
running in the Republican ticket, and then you had Greg Orman. He was running as independent, and you had Laura Kelly. I believe this is my theory that Greg Orman was a really good orator. He was squared away. He wasn't your typical independent who just kind of seems like out there, outlandish, like there's no hope in this guy. He drew a lot of attention. There was some hope in him. So I believe he pulled those independent, those libertarian, those moderate votes, those moderate Dems, and those moderate Republicans away from Kobach because Kobach was so far right. Some people say, take Greg Orman, apologize, Greg Orman out of it. Laura Kelly would have still won. But my theory is if there hadn't been Orman, Chris Kobach would have won. Maybe not by a landslide because a lot of people don't realize Johnson County in Kansas, Johnson County, the Wyandotte County area, and Wichita are three key areas in Kansas, and a lot of times Democrats pull those. We have Ron Estes down there as a congressman in the Wichita area, so he's pulling a lot of the red vote side of Wichita. So he's holding the fort down and holding strong in Wichita, but we just have to do better at gaining Johnson County and Wyandotte County. The far eastern side of Kansas. We got to do better at gaining control of that with the GOP because if we don't, we'll start seeing elections slip out towards the Democratic side.
No, that's interesting. So it's kind of like a Ross Perot type of situation at the
Yep,
Kansas level. You had this third party guy kind of split off the votes because I like Kobach.
that's
Kobach's
my
a great
theory.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. I like Kobach. I mean, he actually came to New York. I had dinner with him once. Great guy, really smart. I mean, he seems like he fits all the bills. Like he checks all the boxes
Yeah.
to be like an elected official, and he keeps losing. And I don't understand why this guy keeps losing. Like he has charisma, he has a charm about him, and he's good on the issues. I just don't. And I went to Harvard. I mean, he's not an idiot. I mean, he has the pedigree, but
Well,
he
there's a
lost that, and he lost the primary for Senate, right?
there's a narrative. There's a narrative that Democrats hate him, hate him. They
Yeah.
think he's the devil. And I didn't meet him until this year. Actually, I didn't meet him until this year. There was an event in Topeka, but I've been hearing Democrats talk about him, and I've been hearing Republicans say, "Oh, he's unelectable" and all this stuff. Excuse me. I'd seen his messaging. I'd seen his Twitter. I'd seen him speak. I was there when he ran for governor, so I would say I really like the guy, but I never had any personal contact. And a lot of times, I refrain from making judgments on politicians when it's about word of mouth until I like have some type of interaction with them. I met him at the state capitol. He probably doesn't even know who I am, but I met him. We spoke for maybe 3 minutes, and great guy, nicest guy, huge smile on his face. And I'm like, you guys painted this dude as the devil. I don't
Right.
really understand that.
Maybe because they're scared of him. Like, that's a thing they do. I mean, they do it in politics all the time. They see a rising star, they see someone they know is going to give them a headache down the line, and they gotta label them, and they gotta just crush them early on before they become something that could actually be a threat to their power, to their control, whatever. I mean, they do it all the time in different cases. He may be a victim of that. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of weird because he would have been a great senator. I think he would have been a great governor. I'm not from Kansas, but I'm just observing from afar from the great
he
state of New York over here. But it is what
he
it
would
is.
definitely be a he would definitely be a force to be reckoned with if he won governor. Now, a lot of people say he's unelectable. I don't believe that. I think he should run for whatever his heart's desire. But I would like to see him maybe take it back a notch and run for a state office, because there's guaranteed he'd win. They're guaranteed he'd win a state house district or a state senate district. It'd be easy, and maybe he may need that great reset. Because some politicians need that. They're so they
Far
have such a
along.
yeah they're so far along. They have such a prowess in the political game, but they've had a couple losses that they may just need to come back and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do, you guys, to prove myself again,
I
build
get that.
myself back up, and then maybe in another year,
You
two
need a
years.
win. You need you need
Yeah.
you need some kind of win just to
Yep.
reestablish yourself, build back credibility. I get that. That makes sense.
Yep. Yep.
I also wanted to ask you about the other topics, more nationally focused. I mean, the 600 versus the 2000. I mean, like I have friends of mine that are a little more libertarian leaning, and they're like against any kind of handout, any kind of payment.
Yeah.
They're just saying open up the economy, and I respect that. I respect that. And then I got other side of it who are more, this emerging kind of populist movement. And they say, I think rightly, you shut down the economy, you prevent people from working, you kill the economy. You have to give back to the people, and you have to support the people. You can't be supporting, all this nonsense overseas. Our duty, if we're going to be spending this kind of money, should be coming, back to the heartland, into
Yeah.
people's pockets. I mean, I see both sides. I respect both sides. What I don't respect, though, is that other third way, which makes no sense to me, where they don't want to give the people money here, but they want to give money abroad. That I can't stand. That just
Yeah.
repulses me. Where do you stand on this debate?
The whole thing is kind of funny, is because I'm diehard conservative, and I've always been a bootstraps type guy. Because growing up, I was poor, piss poor, when it wasn't this lavish poor, food stamps and all that stuff. Like, we were poor when poor was hard, and we never had any handouts. My parents never got any handouts. So the first round at the 1200, when everybody got $1,200 checks out, just like, oh brother, here we go. They're trying to push this socialism. I wasn't for it, but glaring difference between then and now. Economy was still open then. It was not as bad as it is now. So now the economy is completely shut down. Everybody's been affected. So you have to say, as a Republican, as a conservative, you have to say it makes no sense to say no to any type of stimulus bill, to any type of help to the American people. Now, the things going overseas, foreign aid, I am America first, even when it comes to foreign aid. If we're helping with foreign aid, there should still be, a pretty big return of investment when it comes to, our help. I'm not for foreign aid in any facet, especially when we're in an economic crisis like we are now.
Same. I
I
mean,
say
and I think
take it
most
all out.
people agree with us. Most people agree with us. I feel like, if you actually went out and polled people, like a legitimate poll, and you said, do you guys support giving your tax dollars to X, Y, and Z country overseas in the middle of this? Everyone in their right mind would pretty much say no. Only a
Yeah.
few people would agree. But for some reason, it doesn't matter how unpopular these policies are. Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats, both parties, don't seem to get it. There's no response mechanism here. They will just spit in our face. They'll dismiss everything we have to say or think because they don't care. They don't care, because that's what annoys me, because I almost feel like sometimes they take advantage, especially a situation like Georgia, to bring it back to Georgia. They know that a lot of people are pissed off about what happened there. They're pissed off at the governor. They're pissed off at the Secretary of State. They're pissed off at the Republican Party. But they also know that we have to still vote for them. And people hate that feeling. People hate the feeling that they have no choice.
Yeah.
So they're playing with fire. They're playing with fire, just rubbing it in people's faces and just saying, you got to vote for us because the other side's worse. I mean, you can only go so far with that.
Yeah, and they say you got to vote for us because the other side's worse. And it's like, but are they though? Are they though? Because they're Democrats. We know what they're going to do. They've been Democrats. They've been the same. They just have this give, 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 free, 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 anarchy, anarchy, anarchy. Let everybody skate by. But it's the rhinos that find are more of a danger because we don't know. However, you're going to vote. We don't. We just don't know. You're a unicorn. So people say they're worse, and it's like, you're a little worse because you're being manipulative. You're putting us in a position of we don't have any choice. And when people do that, we only have the nuclear option, which is say people may just throw their hands up and say, okay, well, we may just need a complete overhaul. We may actually need and deserve to lose the Senate, go back to the drawing board, get rid of McConnell, get rid of everybody else, and say get fresh people in there. Country going to be in turmoil for 4, 8 years. How bad? How much worse can it get? People say,
So
So
Cernovich says that. I mean, there's some truth to it. I don't know if I agree 100%, but I can understand the thinking. I don't think it's that crazy. I think it's pretty reasonable. I
yeah,
mean, you need to cleanse it. You need to clean up
yeah.
the system, and you need to show the powers that be that there's consequences for this stuff. Like you can't just take advantage of the voters.
Yeah.
You just can't take advantage of the grassroots, take their money, take their votes, and not deliver. Because if you stop delivering, there's no point. We might as well go with the other guys. I
So
mean,
see, I'm a die-hard conservative. I'm a die-hard Republican. Like I'm a
same.
conservative Republican. But if it takes us losing the Senate for our party to get back to a truly conservative and meaningful message so we can solidify our base. If it takes us losing the Senate, then I'm willing. It's going to be horrible, but it's bad now. I'm willing for that. What else can we do? What other option do we have?
It's a
You
good
know,
self-reflection. It's a good way to
yeah,
reevaluate the party and to
there has to be a
recalibrate
check.
it.
There has to be a check. We cannot have politicians like Mitch McConnell up there thinking that they could do absolutely whatever they want with absolutely no recourse and no repercussions from we the people. You aren't. This is the thing, and this is another thing that upset me. You got a 5,533 page bill, something along those lines in terms of pages. You get it 4 or 5 hours before you vote on it, and people start voting yes. It's like, excuse me, you're a congressman and you're a senator. If we wanted you to guess, we can send any old Tom, Dick, and Harry up there to do that. What
It's
what
true.
what makes you qualified? Why should you be the one to do that? So if you're not going to take the job seriously, and if you're not going to enact the will of the people who put you there, you're not there for yourself. You're there for we the people. Then you need to go. It's just that simple. I don't care how long you've been in the
Amen.
Senate.
Amen. I think I just found my social clip that we're going to use after this podcast is over. It's going to be right there. That part. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry. No, but you're 100% right. I mean, the Congress is broken. I
Yeah,
mean, it doesn't matter who you put there. The way it works is broken. The lobbyists, these bureaucrats, these staffers, they control everything. They write up these 5,000 whatever page bills. They stuff it with crap, completely unrelated. It's all pork. It's all spending. It's all pet projects. They throw it at them a few hours before, and it's like putting a gun to your head. It says vote yes, vote no. It doesn't really matter. You have no idea what's in here, and there's no way you're going to find out. There's physically no way
yeah,
to do it. What would it kill them? Would it kill us to have a rule that says you got to read the bills first. You got to give enough time to read the bills. You have to. That would be one law. You have a second law that says, one item at a time act. That's something that's been talked
yeah,
about a lot. One bill, one subject. You can't put, Pakistani gender therapy sessions in the same bill for COVID relief.
yeah,
Separate them. Let them vote them out individually so we know where they stand, because they cram this unpopular stuff into one bill because they
yeah.
know it'll get by. And then you know what else? I think the president should have a line item veto, because if it gets to his desk and it's a situation like this is, he could be like, you know what, I'm cutting out all this pork and I'm just going to leave the good parts, because sometimes there is good parts in the bill. That's how the bill gets passed. They got to put something in there. And if you have a line item veto, you're able to cut through it. I mean, those would be three simple, easy fixes, and Congress would completely change. Our whole system of government would change, but they'll never want that reform. They'll never want it.
Absolutely. Gavin Wax 2022. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about right there. No, it's one of those things where if regardless what's in the bill, there could be a ton of pork in there. No, I don't know a single constituent who would say, shame on you if a representative came in and said, I voted no because I did not have ample time to read and digest the bill. I don't know a sane person would say, well, you should have voted yes on it
Right.
anyways. Makes no sense.
You're right.
It makes no sense. We put you there to make informed decisions
Yep.
for us. So I think all those 3 points that you just said should really be introduced to Congress. We really need to get some traction on those because there needs to be a change. We can't keep passing pork bills.
Agreed, and I agree with you. I think if there was a congressman or a senator, or whoever, who came back, they were at a town hall meeting in wherever county or whatever state, and they said that, I think everyone in the room would respect them because at least it's honest. I don't think they would lose any points. Maybe they'll lose points from their donors or the lobbyists or whoever's pushing them, but their constituents, the people that pay attention, they're going to be like, look, you didn't know what was in it, you couldn't vote on it. I respect that. I respect your honesty.
Yeah, they can go without getting a couple kickbacks.
Exactly. And that's all it is. That's all this is right now. It's just the donor class is controlling the party. The donor class makes the decisions. Whatever the donors want, they get. Whatever the lobbyists want, they get. And these Republicans, we have Republicans in safe red states who aren't that good. And we have Republicans in different areas. They're all rhinos, and they don't match their district. They don't match their state because their state or their district is way more conservative than they are. That's what pisses me off the most.
Who's that? That is, I think, it's the Kinzinger, Representative Kinzinger or Kinninger.
Oh, yeah, that guy. He's
from Illinois, the absolute worst.
Yes.
Oh,
smug, annoying, arrogant. That guy just loves to chirp up every time there's an L for the Trump or the Republicans. I mean, change parties.
But how do I don't understand how somebody like that runs on a Republican ticket and still wins. So that means there's either a ton. I mean, there's a ton of rhinos in Illinois who are voting for him, or they just think that the Democrat's worse than the person that they know is a rhino, even though they're an actual Republican.
I got to look up his district. No, I got to look up his district because it doesn't make sense to me. Because look, because people like him, there's a bunch of them. They all act like they're in the majority when Trump had 97, 98% approval in the party. So you guys represent 3% of the party. So I don't know who you guys are talking about, who you guys are preaching to. And that doesn't even include all the Democrats and independents that support Trump. So these guys like Kitzinger, however you say his name, they always act like, oh, well, we're the moral authority. We're the majority. We're the respectable ones. It's like, you guys don't represent anyone. Like, no one I know respects you or likes you guys, but somehow you guys keep getting elected. It boggles the mind.
Yeah, a lot of people who try to run off of, oh, we're the morals, or we're a Catholic, or we're a Protestant, or we're Southern Baptist. It's like, okay, we're electing you to go to Capitol Hill for legislation. Like, you need to be proficient at passing legislation. Don't try to use all those other talking points or selling points to us, because at the end of the day, there's a ton of religions. I'm Southern Baptist, but I'm not going to vote for somebody just because they're Southern Baptist.
Right.
And a lot of people try to use this, oh, we're the moral authority, or, this is the right way. This is just the way it should be done. It's like, at the end of the day, we need to win.
Yep.
We need to pass legislation that is pro-America first. Yep. If a Buddhist is passing pro-America first legislation, guess what I'm voting for?
The Buddhist.
I'm Southern Baptist, diehard conservative, but guess what? I'm an American, and I didn't go overseas, get shot and blown up to watch this nonsense happen. It's
right.
That has been something that is extremely frustrating. We're not going to get. We got 30 minutes block. I'm not going to get started on the VA.
No, actually, this is good. No, this is a good segue. Did you see that video clip that went viral with the wounded veteran who was getting tackled because he didn't wear a mask? Did you see that?
Yeah, it boggles. It kills me, Gavin, because I was a police officer, I was a sheriff deputy, I was a veteran, and I have always been pro police, like pro law enforcement.
Same.
But I believe in holding people accountable, whether it be the same profession, whether it be the same political party. You got to hold people accountable. So every single one of these cops and deputies who were enforcing these mandate laws or these mandates, these COVID mandates or mask mandates, you're in complete oath of this oath of office. Nothing in your oath says anything about mandates, masks, COVID. The Constitution doesn't say anything about it. So I just don't understand how, in good conscience, because I used to be a police officer. You know what I would do if somebody wasn't wearing a mask? I would say, sir, here's the thing. I'm here to enforce the law. This is not a law. But what is a law is trespassing. So I can ask you to leave. I'm not going to ask you to put your mask on. I asked you to leave. They've asked you to leave. Now you're trespassing. Now you have to go. That's the law I can enact. But if they haven't asked you to leave and they're just talking about your mask, I'm not going to waste my time with it. And I'm most certainly not going to put my hands on you over a
Right.
damn mask.
Right.
That's absolutely that's ludicrous. Cops have uh I'm slipping my mind now. They have
Discretion.
discretion. They have discretion. So that whole entire scene was completely mind-boggling. I was beside myself. I'm like,
And
he had to assault somebody.
I support, like, I agree with you. I support the police. I support the police unions, all that. But if I was in their positions, if I was, running the police union, or if I was like a commanding officer, whatever it was, I would tell them, it says, listen, we have this big campaign that's being waged against cops that wants to defund the police, that wants to demonize police. We have this other side of the spectrum who support us, who have the Back the Blue rallies, et cetera, et cetera. You know what would be the smart thing to do? To use discretion and to say, listen, we're not enforcing, like you said, all these illegal mandates. They're not passed by legislatures. They're not voted on. They're just governor's diktats. We're not going to enforce them because they put us in a bad position. They draw and they make more enemies out of us, and we need all the support we can get right now because the left is trying to defund us. So I mean, they got to use a little more. They have to be more savvy about this stuff. They can't just blindly
Their
follow their
brains.
governors.
They got to use their brains.
Yep,
You should not be using your badge to enforce unconstitutional mandates. You
agreed.
should remain neutral until there is a law or a crime that has been committed.
Yep,
It's just that simple.
and even
It's
in New
just that
York,
simple.
there was a case. They do have a law. This is a law in the books about like street vendors. They're not allowed to do the street vendors. And I think it was like last summer or something. There was all this controversy because the cops were arresting, the woman who sells like the churros on the subway or whatever it is. The cops, they said it best. They said, listen, this is a law. We don't like this law. We don't like enforcing this law. But you guys voted for this law. We have to enforce this law. So you can't blame us for enforcing it. Complain to your politician. And that was the
Yeah.
best response ever because it was a law. It was on the books. You're not allowed to sell like certain foods on the train or whatever. If you don't like it, I don't like it. I think it's dumb. If someone wants to sell a bottle of water to me on the train when it's hot, I'll buy that water. I don't care. Who cares?
Mm.
They're making money. I rather people be selling stuff like that, making an honest living, than committing actual crimes.
Yeah.
So
Selling
that's
crack or heroin.
exactly. So what's wrong with that? I think that's a good response, and I think everyone was like able to step back and be like, you know what, you're right. We can't blame the cops for this. It's kind of like blaming the messenger.
And I'll play devil's advocate, because I have a record in being law enforcement. So obviously nobody's going to be like, oh, he's a cop hater. But if you're arresting old Sally Mae for churros, the damn murder rate, or at least the conviction rate for murders,
Yeah.
crimes like that, better be way low. Because if you
Yep.
got time to arrest for churros, you got time to arrest child predators and murderers and everything like that. So I don't want to see, people getting arrested for churros, but the murder rates are way up here and the conviction rates are way down here.
That's right. No, that's right.
That's a little ridiculous. Now, a law is a law. You break a law, you do it. If you, an officer is obligated to
Right.
enforce that law if you break a law in front of him. He's obligated to address it. He may not be obligated to arrest because he has discretion, but he's obligated to act on it.
Right.
But
Oh, that's a good
there's,
distinction. That's a good
yeah,
distinction. You can act. We don't have to make the arrest. That's actually, I didn't
yeah,
even know that. That's a good point. And what was it? The sheriffs in upstate New York. When Cuomo, or as you called him, King Nipple Rings, came out and said we're not going to do any Thanksgiving dinners for 10 people or plus. All the sheriffs, they said we're not enforcing it. And then what happened? He couldn't do anything because they
yeah,
said we're not enforcing it, and it was the end of it. No one enforced it. It was a meaningless law. He looked like an idiot, and they brushed it under the rug. So these departments, these sheriffs, these cops, they have a lot of power in these situations because a lot of these Democrat governors, Whitmer, whoever, they're all emperors with no clothes.
yeah.
Because the second you call their bluff, they have nothing. They have nothing
The,
else.
and this whole thing really needs to be where sheriff deputies or the sheriff actually steps up, the sheriff of the county steps up and is at the forefront and saying, we're not going to enforce these unconstitutional mandates because, we're not going to use our badges to betray our oath of office or betray the public trust. Because at the end of the day, you're an officer, you're there for public trust, you're there for the people. You're not there for Governor Cuomo or mayor, whoever. So the sheriff is an elected position. He is held accountable. He's held accountable to the people in his county where he'll be voted out. Cities are a little bit different. All
Right.
appointed, police officers are a little bit different. But the sheriff should be taking up that mantle and saying, look, we're going to be the standard, and we're going to say that we're not going to do X, Y, and Z because it's unconstitutional, and city officers will fall in line. The police chief may not because he can be replaced by the
Right.
the governing board of the city, but the police officers have discretion. They'll follow the sheriff deputy and the sheriff's lead on that.
No,
So
that's true. It's a big problem in New York because the commissioner really has no power. He could be gone in an instant. But this has been a great podcast. We covered a lot of ground here. I'm really glad you came on. And I want to have you back on again as a recurring guest, but I want to give the final word to you. Please let all the Waxcast viewers and listeners know where they can follow you, your commentary, and whatever else you're doing in the great state of Kansas.
awesome. So you can follow me on Twitter at vice_chair_Bryant. That's VICECHR_BRYANT again. Vice CHR_BRYANT on Twitter.
And it's a great Twitter. I can vouch for it. It has some quality fire-based tweets. But this has been awesome. And everyone who's listening, don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, 5 stars. And we're going to have more Waxcast podcasts coming your way in just a bit. So thanks again for tuning in.
Awesome. Thanks, Gavin.